You think survival meant buying fancy gadgets or following instruction manuals? Think again. During the 1930s, American families facing the Great Depression developed ingenious solutions from everyday scraps that kept households running when money vanished entirely. Let's dig into 30 genius 1930s hacks our grandparents used to survive. Newspaper insulation was one of the most widespread survival hacks families used when winter winds cut through thin walls. Families collected old newspapers from neighbors and churches, stuffing them between wall studs, under floorboards, and inside attic spaces to create barriers against the cold. The layered paper trapped air pockets that slowed heat loss remarkably well. Children helped by crumpling sheets into tight balls that fit snugly into cracks around windows and doors. Some families even lined their clothing with newspaper, tucking pages inside coats and wrapping feet before sliding into worn shoes. The rustling sound of paper-lined garments became familiar in schoolrooms across rural America. What made this hack valuable was its complete lack of cost. Newspapers that would otherwise burn gained new life as thermal protection. Mothers taught daughters this technique. Knowing resourcefulness meant survival when coal ran short. Flour sack clothing transformed humble cotton bags into dresses, shirts, curtains, and quilts that clothed entire families through the darkest Depression years. Manufacturers eventually printed colorful patterns on their sacks, knowing housewives chose brands based on fabric designs they could repurpose. Women purchased flour based on matching patterns, collecting enough sacks to create coordinated outfits. The cotton was surprisingly soft after washing, often more comfortable than store-bought fabric costing far more than families could afford. Grandmothers taught younger women to remove printed labels by soaking sacks in lye water, scrubbing until cotton emerged clean and ready for cutting. A single 100-pound flour sack yielded enough material for a child's dress or 2 dish towels. The stitching required skill, but seeing children clothed in bright fabric made the work worthwhile. This hack represented dignity maintained through creativity when everything else seemed to crumble. Dandelion coffee became the morning ritual for families who could no longer afford real coffee beans during the Depression's worst years. The process began by digging dandelion roots from yards and fields, plants growing everywhere without cost. These roots were scrubbed clean, chopped into small pieces, and roasted slowly in cast iron pans until dark brown and brittle. Ground into powder using hand mills or pounded between stones, the roasted roots produced a surprisingly rich, earthy brew when steeped in boiling water. The taste carried hints of coffee's bitterness without caffeine, providing comfort on cold mornings when real coffee remained a distant luxury. Children often helped with harvesting, learning to identify the jagged leaves and deep taproots making the best substitute. Some families mixed dandelion with chicory root for deeper flavor. This hack kept morning traditions alive when store shelves might as well have been empty. Cardboard shoe soles extended the life of worn footwear when replacement shoes were simply impossible to purchase. Families traced foot shapes onto sturdy cardboard from boxes, cutting precise insoles fitting inside shoes whose leather bottoms had worn through. Some households kept stacks of pre-cut insoles ready, knowing wet weather would dissolve one pair quickly. Children walked to school with cardboard between their feet and the ground, learning early that complaining changed nothing when resources were scarce. More skilled families layered cardboard with newspaper for durability, sometimes coating the bottom with melted wax for water resistance. The cardboard compressed throughout the day, requiring nightly replacement in many cases. What seemed like a temporary fix often became a permanent solution lasting months. This hack taught children that ingenuity could solve problems that money could not, a lesson shaping how an entire generation approached challenges. Rendered fat soap kept families clean when store-bought bars cost money needed for food and rent. The process began by saving every scrap of animal fat from cooking, bacon grease, beef tallow, pork lard, storing it in crocks until enough accumulated. The fat was melted slowly, strained through cheesecloth, then combined with lye water made from hardwood ashes soaked in rainwater. This mixture was stirred for hours until it thickened, then poured into wooden molds to harden over several days. The resulting soap was harsh but effective, cutting through dirt with efficiency that commercial products rarely matched. Some women added garden herbs for fragrance. Soap-making day became a community event, with women pooling resources and sharing labor. This hack transformed waste into cleanliness, proving that self-sufficiency was possible even when everything else seemed impossible for struggling families. Potato water starch gave families crisp, pressed clothing without spending money on commercial products. After boiling potatoes for dinner, the cloudy cooking water was saved and strained into jars. This starchy liquid, sprinkled onto fabric before ironing, created the same crisp finish that expensive store-bought starch provided. Shirts emerged with sharp collars, dresses with structured pleats, and tablecloths with professional crispness. The technique required practice. Too much potato water left fabric stiff, while too little failed to provide adequate body. Women learned to test concentration by feel, adjusting based on the weight of different fabrics. Some families kept potato water in ice boxes, though most used it fresh within a day before it soured. Sunday mornings often began with the smell of heated irons pressing starch into church clothes. This hack represented determination to maintain dignity even when poverty threatened to strip away pride. Vinegar cleaning solutions replaced expensive commercial products throughout Depression-era households. A single bottle of white vinegar diluted with water cleaned windows, cut grease, sanitized surfaces, removed stains, and deodorized everything from outhouses to kitchens. Adding salt created paste perfect for scrubbing copper pots until they gleamed. Mixed with baking soda, vinegar cleared clogged drains and scoured stubborn buildup from ovens. The sharp smell became synonymous with cleanliness, filling homes on Saturday cleaning days when families prepared for Sunday visitors. Women kept bottles of diluted vinegar, tackling spills immediately. The acid killed mold and mildew, particularly valuable in damp basements where moisture encouraged growth. Some families added dried herbs to vinegar bottles, creating pleasantly scented solutions costing virtually nothing. This hack proved that expensive products offered little advantage over simple chemistry applied with elbow grease. Bread bag ironing solved the problem of wrinkled clothes without expensive spray starch or steam irons. Families saved waxed paper bags from store-bought bread, using them as pressing cloths when ironing delicate fabrics. The slight wax coating prevented scorching while allowing heat to smooth wrinkles. More importantly, families learned to dampen clothes by sprinkling them with water, rolling them tightly, then storing them inside bread bags overnight. The sealed environment allowed moisture to distribute evenly throughout fabric, making ironing faster the next morning. Children often helped with sprinkling and rolling, learning household skills serving them throughout their lives. Some women sprinkled clothes Saturday night, letting them sit until Monday's ironing session. The bread bags were reused dozens of times before wearing out. This hack exemplified the Depression-era mindset that nothing should serve only one purpose when creativity could multiply value. String-saving collections became obsessive practices in households where every scrap held potential value. Families kept dedicated balls of saved string, winding together pieces from packages, feed sacks, and gifts until balls grew larger than softballs. This accumulated string served countless purposes: tying packages, mending clothes, securing garden plants to stakes, creating toys for children, hanging laundry when lines broke. Some families organized string by thickness, keeping separate balls for different purposes. Children learned to untie knots carefully rather than cutting, preserving maximum length for future use. The string ball often hung near the kitchen door, always accessible when need arose. What might seem like compulsive hoarding was actually practical wisdom. Purchasing new string represented money that could buy food instead. The habit persisted long after the Depression ended. This hack trained minds to see value in what others discarded. Lard medicinal treatments provided relief when doctor visits cost money families desperately needed for survival. Pure rendered lard served as the base for countless home remedies passed down through generations. Mixed with camphor and applied to chests, it loosened congestion and soothed coughs during winter illnesses. Rubbed into cracked, bleeding hands after hard labor, it softened skin and promoted healing. Combined with turpentine on flannel cloths, it created poultices drawing infection from wounds and relieving muscle aches. Mothers kept jars of medicated lard ready for emergencies, knowing professional care remained beyond reach. The fat's moisturizing properties made it effective for diaper rash, chapped lips, and dry scalp. Some families added herbs like eucalyptus for therapeutic effects. This hack kept families functional when illness threatened everything. The practice taught children that healing often came from kitchen cupboards. Eggshell cleaning powder transformed kitchen waste into effective scouring agents that sparkled pots, pans, and dishes without spending a cent. Families saved eggshells from breakfast and baking, drying them on windowsills or warming shelves until brittle. Once dry, the shells were crushed into fine powder using rolling pins or wrapped in cloth and pounded. This powder, slightly abrasive but gentle enough to avoid scratching, scrubbed stuck-on food from cast-iron skillets and removed stubborn stains from enamelware. Mixed with soap, it became a paste that polished copper bottoms until they gleamed. Some families added dried herbs or citrus peel for pleasant fragrance. Children often helped with crushing, turning waste disposal into productive work. The calcium in eggshells also benefited garden soil when the used powder was rinsed into vegetable beds. This hack embodied the Depression philosophy that nothing left the kitchen as true garbage. Homemade tooth powder kept families' teeth clean when commercial toothpaste cost precious pennies better spent on food. The basic recipe combined baking soda with salt in roughly equal proportions, creating an effective cleanser that removed food particles and freshened breath. Some families added dried powdered sage leaves for flavor and cleaning properties, while others mixed in drops of peppermint oil when available. The powder was stored in small tins, with each family member dipping a dampened toothbrush into the mixture. The slightly salty, alkaline taste took getting used to, but the results were undeniable. Teeth stayed clean and breath stayed fresh without monthly purchases. Children learned to make their own tooth powder, understanding that self-sufficiency extended even to daily hygiene. Some households shared a single tin, while others gave each person their own supply. This hack kept dental health manageable when dentist visits were unthinkable luxuries. Kerosene lamp wicks made from fabric scraps kept homes lit when store-bought wicks ran out and money for replacements simply did not exist. Families saved worn cotton clothing, old sheets, and fabric scraps specifically for this purpose, cutting strips to match the width of lamp holders. The cotton needed to be tightly woven and completely natural. Synthetic fibers melted and smoked rather than burning cleanly. Women would braid multiple thin strips together for wider lamps, creating wicks that burned steadily. The homemade wicks required more frequent trimming than commercial versions, but they cost nothing and could be replaced instantly from the rag bag. Children learned which fabrics worked best, understanding that heavy cotton from worn work shirts outperformed thinner dress material. Some families soaked their homemade wicks in salt water before drying, which reduced smoking and extended burning time. This hack meant light continued when resources seemed exhausted. Rubber tire sandals gave worn-out automobile tires new life as durable footwear that outlasted leather shoes many times over. When tires became too bald for safe driving, families cut them apart using sharp knives, tracing foot shapes onto the tread sections. The thick rubber became soles that resisted wear, water, and rough terrain far better than any store-bought shoe. Straps were fashioned from inner tubes, old leather belts, or braided fabric, attached through holes punched in the rubber with heated nails. The resulting sandals were heavy but nearly indestructible, perfect for farm work, gardening, and outdoor chores that destroyed conventional footwear within weeks. Children wore tire sandals through entire summers, feet protected from rocks, thorns, and hot ground. The tread patterns even provided excellent grip on wet surfaces. Cobblers in some communities specialized in tire footwear, trading skills for food. This hack turned automotive waste into practical necessity. Waterglass egg preservation allowed families to store eggs for months without refrigeration, ensuring protein availability through winter when hens stopped laying. Waterglass, or sodium silicate, was mixed with water and poured into large crocks. Fresh, unwashed eggs were carefully lowered into this solution, which sealed the porous shells and prevented air and bacteria from entering. Properly stored eggs remained edible for 6 months or longer, their yolks staying bright and whites staying firm. The key was using only fresh eggs with intact shells. Any cracks allowed the solution to penetrate and ruin the contents. Families collected eggs daily during peak laying season, immediately submerging them in prepared crocks stored in cool cellars. The eggs emerged slightly slippery but otherwise normal, perfect for baking, scrambling, or any other use. This hack meant breakfast protein continued through the darkest winter months when fresh eggs were impossible. Homemade flypaper controlled insect populations without expensive commercial products that strained tight budgets. The basic recipe involved cooking sugar, corn syrup, and water together until thick and sticky, then spreading this mixture onto strips of brown paper. These strips were hung from ceilings, door frames, and near windows where flies gathered, trapping pests on contact. Some families added drops of honey or molasses to increase attractiveness, while others experimented with different sugar concentrations for optimal stickiness. The papers needed regular replacement as they filled with insects, but materials cost virtually nothing. Children often helped cut paper strips and hang them throughout the house, learning that pest control required constant attention. The sticky papers also caught other flying insects plaguing summer kitchens. This hack kept food preparation areas cleaner and reduced disease transmission during months when screens were damaged or non-existent. Onion poultices drew infection from wounds and eased chest congestion when doctors remained beyond financial reach for most working families. Raw onions were sliced or chopped, then wrapped in clean cloth and applied directly to affected areas. For chest complaints, the poultice was warmed slightly and placed on the upper torso, its pungent vapors helping to loosen mucus and ease breathing. For infected cuts or boils, raw onion was believed to draw out poison and reduce swelling. The treatment left patients smelling strongly of onion, but families swore by its effectiveness. Mothers kept onions specifically for medicinal use, understanding that their antiseptic properties had served generations before modern medicine existed. Children learned to tolerate the burning sensation and strong odor, knowing the poultice meant someone cared enough to help them heal. This hack connected Depression-era households to centuries of folk medicine wisdom. Burlap sack rugs covered cold floors and added warmth to drafty rooms without spending money on commercial floor coverings. Families collected burlap feed sacks, coffee bags, and grain sacks, washing them thoroughly to remove dust and odors. The burlap was cut into strips and braided together, then coiled and stitched into circular or oval rugs that cushioned feet against bare wood or concrete. Some women dyed the strips using natural materials, onion skins for yellow, walnut hulls for brown, beet juice for red, creating colorful patterns that brightened dreary rooms. The rugs wore surprisingly well, their rough texture improving with age as fibers softened from foot traffic. Larger rugs required multiple sacks and many hours of braiding, often becoming winter evening projects completed by lamplight. Children helped with cutting and braiding, learning skills, producing tangible improvements. This hack transformed agricultural waste into domestic comfort. Tin can innovations repurposed food containers into countless household tools that served families for years after original contents were consumed. Clean cans became drinking cups, storage containers, cookie cutters, candle holders, planters, and children's toys. Larger cans with both ends removed became biscuit cutters or were flattened into patches for leaky roofs. Smaller cans punched with nail holes created graters for cheese and vegetables. Some families cut cans into strips for makeshift hinges, patches, and repairs. The metal was surprisingly workable with basic tools, bending and cutting to fit specific needs. Children collected cans eagerly, knowing their value extended far beyond garbage. Resourceful families stacked matching cans to create storage systems, while others used them as molds for candles and soap. The tin can economy meant nothing metal ever reached the trash heap during Depression years. This hack demonstrated how industrial packaging could serve domestic purposes. Goose grease remedies served as the foundation for countless treatments that kept families healthy when professional medical care cost more than most could afford. Families who raised geese carefully rendered the fat after butchering, storing it in clean jars for medicinal use throughout the year. Applied to chests and covered with warm flannel, goose grease loosened congestion and eased breathing during respiratory illnesses. Rubbed into joints, it relieved arthritis and rheumatism that plagued working bodies. Mixed with turpentine, it became a powerful liniment for sore muscles after long days of labor. Mothers applied plain goose grease to diaper rash, cracked lips, and wind-burned skin. The fat's smooth texture and mild smell made it preferable to stronger alternatives. Some families traded goose grease with neighbors who lacked supply. This hack connected household poultry raising to family health in ways modern medicine has forgotten, but Depression families understood. Coffee ground fertilizer turned breakfast waste into garden gold that helped vegetables grow strong without purchased plant food. Families saved used coffee grounds in buckets, mixing them into garden soil around tomatoes, beans, and other vegetables thriving in slightly acidic conditions. The grounds added nitrogen, attracted beneficial earthworms, and improved soil texture by increasing organic matter. Some gardeners spread grounds directly around plants as mulch, while others composted them first with kitchen scraps. The dark color helped soil absorb warmth earlier in spring, extending growing seasons. Children learned to save grounds automatically, understanding that even breakfast dregs contributed to family food production. The practice cost nothing yet produced measurable results in garden yields. Families without coffee saved tea leaves for similar purposes, refusing to waste anything benefiting the soil. This hack connected kitchen and garden in circular systems where waste became input. Homemade paste and glue kept households functioning when store-bought adhesives cost money better spent on food and fuel. The simplest recipe combined flour and water into a smooth mixture, cooked until thick, creating paste strong enough for paper crafts, wallpaper repairs, and school projects. More durable versions added sugar or corn syrup, which increased tackiness. Some families boiled animal bones and hooves for hours, extracting natural gelatin that dried into powerful glue capable of mending furniture and leather goods. Children used flour paste for school assignments, learning that creativity required no special purchases. The paste kept well in covered jars, ready whenever repairs demanded attention. Mothers mended books, reattached loose wallpaper, and sealed envelopes without spending a cent. This hack demonstrated that basic chemistry could solve practical problems when commercial products remained beyond reach, building confidence in self-reliance. Ash lye water served as the foundation for countless cleaning tasks before commercial detergents existed. Families collected hardwood ashes from fireplaces and stoves, placing them in barrels or buckets with holes in the bottom. Water poured over the ashes slowly dripped through, emerging as caustic lye water powerful enough to cut through the toughest grease. This solution cleaned floors, walls, and outdoor surfaces that resisted ordinary scrubbing. Mixed with rendered fat, it became soap. Diluted heavily, it softened water for laundry. The process required careful handling. Lye burned skin and damaged fabric if used too strong, but families learned proper concentrations through experience passed down through generations. Children were taught to respect the barrel's contents while understanding its value. The ash that would otherwise fill trash heaps became essential cleaning supply. This hack transformed heating byproduct into household necessity. Corncob pipes provided smoking pleasure when store-bought pipes cost money working men simply could not spare. After harvesting corn, families saved the largest, densest cobs, letting them dry completely in attics or sheds for months until they hardened. A hole was bored through the center using heated wire or hand drills, creating the bowl. A hollow reed, whittled stick, or salvaged metal tube became the stem, inserted into a hole drilled at an angle. The finished pipes smoked surprisingly well, the porous cob naturally cooling and filtering smoke. Some families grew corn specifically for pipe making, selecting varieties known for producing superior cobs. Men carved initials or simple designs into their pipes, personalizing objects that cost nothing but time. The pipes lasted months with proper care, burning out eventually but easily replaced from the corn harvest. This hack provided small pleasure during years when pleasures were few. Soapwort plants growing wild in ditches and fields provided natural cleaning agents that cost nothing to harvest. This perennial herb, brought by settlers from Europe, spread across America and produced compounds that foamed when agitated in water. Families gathered leaves and roots, boiling them to release saponins, natural soap-like chemicals that cleaned fabric, hair, and skin gently but effectively. The solution worked particularly well on delicate fabrics that harsh lye soap damaged. Women washed lace, silk, and fine woolens in soapwort water, preserving precious garments through years of wear. Children learned to identify the plant's pink flowers and lance-shaped leaves. Some families cultivated soapwort in gardens for reliable supply. The plant's gentle action made it suitable for bathing babies and washing hair. This hack connected households to ancient cleaning traditions predating modern chemistry. Acorn flour extended grain supplies when wheat flour cost more than families could afford. Children gathered acorns from oak trees during autumn, filling baskets with nuts that would otherwise rot. The acorns required extensive processing, shelling, grinding, and repeated soaking to remove bitter tannins that made raw acorns inedible. The soaking took days, with water changed multiple times until bitterness disappeared. The resulting meal was dried and ground into flour mixed with wheat or corn flour for bread and pancakes. The flavor was nutty and slightly sweet, different from grain flour but pleasant once families adjusted. Native Americans had processed acorns for thousands of years, and Depression-era families rediscovered this knowledge when necessity demanded. This hack turned abundant wild food into usable staple, proving that survival knowledge from earlier generations remained valuable when modern supply systems failed completely. Elderberry medicine provided relief from colds and flu when doctor visits cost money families desperately needed for food. Elderberry bushes grew wild along roadsides and forest edges, producing dark purple berries gathered each autumn. The berries were cooked into syrup with sugar or honey, creating medicine that generations swore reduced fever, eased congestion, and shortened illness duration. Children learned to identify the distinctive umbrella-shaped flower clusters and hanging berry bunches, understanding which plants provided medicine and which lookalikes were poisonous. Mothers dosed sick children with elderberry syrup at the first sign of sniffles, often preventing worse illness from developing. The syrup kept well in cool cellars, providing medicine through winter months when illness struck hardest. This hack connected families to herbal traditions stretching back centuries, proving effective remedies existed beyond pharmacy shelves. Beeswax polish protected and beautified furniture, leather, and wood floors when commercial polishes cost precious money. Families who kept bees harvested wax along with honey, melting the comb and straining it clean for household use. The wax was mixed with turpentine or linseed oil, creating polish that penetrated wood grain, protected surfaces from moisture, and produced deep, lasting shine. Leather boots, belts, and harnesses lasted years longer when regularly treated with beeswax polish. Children helped apply the mixture, rubbing it into surfaces until it warmed and absorbed. The polish also waterproofed fabric and sealed cracks in wooden containers. Families without bees purchased wax cheaply from beekeepers or substituted rendered tallow. This hack kept households looking respectable while protecting valuable possessions from wear, water, and time's passage during years when replacement was simply impossible. Mullein leaf toilet paper solved an awkward necessity when commercial tissue cost money needed elsewhere. This fuzzy-leaved plant grew wild across America, producing soft, absorbent leaves families gathered and dried for bathroom use. The leaves were large enough for practical use, soft enough for comfort, and free for the taking from roadsides and fields. Children learned to identify mullein's distinctive woolly leaves and tall flower stalks, gathering supplies during summer for winter use. The dried leaves were stored in outhouses and bathrooms, replacing purchased paper that seemed an extravagant expense. Some families grew mullein deliberately near outhouses for convenient supply. The plant also had medicinal uses. Tea from leaves soothed coughs, and the fuzzy surface could absorb wound drainage. This hack addressed a basic need families rarely discussed but always faced, proving nature provided solutions for even the most personal requirements. Willow bark tea provided pain relief when aspirin and other medications cost money struggling families could not spare. Willow trees grew along streams and wet areas across America, their bark containing salicin, the natural compound from which aspirin was originally derived. Families stripped bark from young branches, dried it thoroughly, then steeped it in boiling water to create tea that reduced fever and eased aches throughout the body. The taste was bitter, but the relief was real and the cost was nothing at all. Mothers dosed children and adults alike with willow bark tea during illness, understanding that the same medicine existed in natural form that pharmacies sold in processed tablets. The knowledge passed through generations, connecting Depression-era families to healing traditions stretching back thousands of years. This hack proved that effective remedies grew freely for those who knew where to look and how to prepare them properly. Leftover cereal meat coating was a trick that came straight from the back of the box. When breadcrumbs were out and cornflakes had already gone into yesterday's casserole, cooks got creative with whatever dry cereal they had left. Bran flakes, crisped rice, even plain puffed wheat. They were all crushed, seasoned, and pressed into service as a meat coating. The idea was to roll a cutlet or drumstick in milk or egg, then dredge it through crushed cereal to make a crunchy crust. It was cheaper, often healthier, and surprisingly effective. Some people added parmesan or paprika to the mix to boost the flavor, while others liked the sweetness it brought to pork or chicken. Kids never questioned it, especially if the cereal had been part of breakfast just that morning. These tricks were passed down in hand-me-down cookbooks and on recipe cards that started with, "Use what you have." And that is really what it was about, making dinner work without running to the store. Sometimes the best recipes came from the bottom of the box. Baked rice and onion casserole was simple, plain, and deeply dependable. In the hardest years of the 1930s, families needed meals that filled the belly without emptying the pantry, and this one checked every box. You started with raw rice, mixed it with chopped onions and whatever fat you had, bacon grease, lard, even a dab of margarine. Sometimes a splash of milk or broth went in for moisture, but often it was just water and a bit of salt. The whole thing was baked slowly in the oven until the rice swelled, the onions softened, and the top formed a thin, crisp crust. It smelled like comfort and tasted like survival. There was nothing fancy in it, but that was the point. It worked. You could serve it hot for dinner or eat the leftovers cold for breakfast. Some added beans, others stirred in eggs to bulk it up. But even in its bare form, it felt like a full meal. It was the kind of dish that disappeared fast because it was familiar, filling, and just warm enough to carry you through. Powdered milk foam for dessert topping was a moment of real creativity hiding in the back of the pantry. When fresh cream or eggs were out of reach, powdered milk stepped in, and with the right touch, it fluffed into something that passed for whipped topping. You mixed the powder with cold water, chilled it down as much as possible, and beat it with sugar until it grew light and airy. Sometimes people added a splash of lemon juice or vanilla to round out the flavor. It was not quite whipped cream, but it was good enough to top a pudding, finish a Jell-O mold, or crown a square of sponge cake. And it made desserts feel finished, even if the ingredients were missing in action. Kids did not question it. They just remembered the sweet, creamy taste. It was affordable, shelf-stable, and dependable. That was the magic of it. Nobody uses powdered milk like this today, but it once stood in proudly when nothing else could. Saving bacon grease for frying was one of those simple yet clever tricks that made a small kitchen feel full of flavor. Your grandfather knew that nothing went to waste, and that included the drippings left after frying bacon. He would pour the grease carefully into an empty coffee tin or jar, set it aside, and use it later to season vegetables, cornbread, or fried potatoes. The result was food that tasted richer without needing extra butter or oil. Families got used to that smoky flavor, and many grew to prefer it over store-bought fats. It was not only about thrift, but also about taste, since the grease held on to every bit of smoky bacon essence. Back then, there was pride in stretching every part of an ingredient as far as it could go. Today, we mostly throw those drippings away, not realizing that one of the best old secrets to deep, hearty cooking was right there in the pan all along. Clay-coated meats were one of the most astonishing ways Native American cooks sealed in moisture, flavor, and nutrients without a single modern tool. Fresh game was coated in thick, wet clay, sometimes along with a layer of leaves or bark, then buried directly in hot coals or ash. As the clay baked hard around the meat, it formed a natural oven, trapping the juices inside and allowing the food to steam slowly in its own rich flavors. When the clay was finally cracked open, the aroma would hit you first, deep, smoky, and primal. It was cooking stripped down to its purest, most beautiful form. And even as the meat roasted and absorbed the earth's gifts, native chefs had another breathtaking trick, turning simple berry juice into smoking cloths that kissed their foods with a sweetness no store-bought glaze could ever match. Homemade mayonnaise was one of those tricks that made church ladies feel like magicians in the kitchen. Before jars of mayonnaise were widely available, women learned to whisk oil and egg yolks together until they became a smooth, creamy spread. It was not easy because the mixture could break if handled too roughly, but when it worked, it felt like an accomplishment. Homemade mayonnaise was used in sandwiches, potato salads, and vegetable spreads, bringing a fresh richness that people remembered fondly. It was also far cheaper than buying prepared versions, which made it a smart choice for large families or community meals. Church ladies often passed down tips on how to get the texture right, and recipes appeared in local cookbooks to guide beginners. The flavor was sharper and fresher than store-bought, which gave simple dishes an extra kick. At potlucks, someone always had a mayonnaise-based salad that was proudly made from scratch. It was another reminder that thrift and taste did not have to be separate. Making something out of simple pantry items and skill was a badge of honor. It was clever, frugal, and satisfying. Cabbage soup diet trick was less about flavor and more about following trends. In the 70s, the idea of slimming meals took hold, and housewives leaned on cabbage soup as a quick fix. It was cheap, filling, and gave the illusion of progress when paired with diet plans of the day. Whole heads of cabbage simmered with onions, tomatoes, and broth became the base for a week of meals. While it was never glamorous, it fit the moment, when weight-conscious recipes filled magazines and cookbooks. Housewives shared variations among friends, sometimes dressing it up with spices or lean meats, but the essence was always thrift wrapped in health claims. It was one of those fads that reflected both resourcefulness and cultural pressure, standing as proof that even soups carried social weight. Corncob jelly was one of those recipes that proved nothing had to go to waste. After the kernels were cut off, church ladies would boil the cobs to extract every bit of flavor, then add sugar and pectin to make a golden, sweet jelly. The result was surprisingly delicate, with a honey-like taste that spread beautifully on bread or biscuits. It turned what many would throw away into something cherished. Families loved it because it felt like a hidden treasure created from scraps and ingenuity. Jars of corncob jelly often appeared at church fundraisers or as gifts, their golden color catching the light on pantry shelves. The recipe spread quickly through communities because it embodied the thrifty spirit of the times. It was not just about food, but about honoring every resource. The cleverness lay in seeing sweetness where others saw waste. Corncob jelly became a reminder that church kitchens were places of both practicality and imagination. It was a humble but meaningful symbol of how much could be done with so little. Making soup from scraps was a tradition built on necessity and thrift. Onion skins, carrot tops, celery leaves, and bones that others might throw away were collected and simmered into broths. Nothing was wasted, and every bit of flavor was coaxed from ingredients that seemed past their usefulness. Grandfathers knew that scraps still carried value, and a pot of soup could feed a family with hardly any fresh ingredients. The broth would simmer slowly, filling the house with comforting aromas that belied its humble beginnings. Vegetables, noodles, or grains were often added to turn the broth into a full meal. This practice meant fewer trips to the market and more meals from the same supply. It was not only practical but also a reminder of resourcefulness in hard times. Families ate well because someone knew how to turn scraps into sustenance. Soup from scraps may sound simple today, but it was once a mark of clever survival in the kitchen. Smoking fish with wild berries for a natural glaze was one of those strokes of genius that blended necessity and creativity in perfect balance. Freshly caught fish were rubbed or brushed with mashed wild berries like cranberries, chokecherries, or elderberries, then carefully smoked over low, aromatic fires. The natural sugars in the berries caramelized slowly in the smoke, forming a delicate, flavorful glaze that locked in moisture and added a subtle, tangy sweetness to every bite. It was preservation and flavor enhancement rolled into one breathtaking technique. The berry glaze also helped protect the fish from drying out too fast or attracting insects during the long smoking process. But the magic of earthborn cooking did not stop at meat. Deep underground and right in the fire itself, native chefs had another trick: roasting tough, stubborn root vegetables until they were sweet, tender, and full of hidden strength. Celery salt on cottage cheese might not sound like much, but for mid-century dieters, it was a little miracle. In the 1950s, cottage cheese was hailed as the queen of health foods, low in fat, high in protein, and endlessly adaptable. But let us be honest, it was bland. Enter celery salt. Just a dash gave it a briny, herby kick that made the whole bowl come alive. It was cheap, shelf-stable, and sprinkled on everything from tomato slices to hard-boiled eggs. But with cottage cheese, it had a real glow-up. This combo became a go-to lunch for housewives watching their waistlines, often served on lettuce with half a pear or a canned peach on top. It looked like a diet plate, but tasted like something more satisfying. You could find this suggestion in health columns, diet booklets, and women's magazines from coast to coast. It was a trick born of scarcity and self-restraint, dressed up to feel like something fancier. Even today, a bite of cottage cheese with a little celery salt feels like stepping into a lunch counter from 70 years ago. Quiet, cool, and just a little strange. Wilted lettuce salad was not just about saving soggy greens. It was about making the most of what the garden gave, even past its prime. When lettuce started to wilt in the heat or after a few days indoors, families did not toss it. Instead, they poured hot bacon grease mixed with vinegar over the top, reviving the leaves into something tender and flavorful. The heat wilted the lettuce just enough, and the vinegar gave it a punch of brightness. Bits of onion or crumbled bacon were added when possible, but the core of the dish was that sizzling pour. It turned tired lettuce into a warm salad with more depth than any cold dressing could offer. You did not need much to make it feel special. It was a moment when something old felt new again. In a time of extreme frugality, it captured the mindset perfectly. Do not throw it out. Just use it differently. Wilted lettuce was not a fallback. It was a quiet trick that helped people feel like they still had a choice at the table. Bread-soaked meatballs were a small act of genius hiding in plain sight. When you did not have enough breadcrumbs, or when the bread itself was too stale to eat, you soaked it in milk until it turned soft and fluffy. Then you mixed it into ground meat, herbs, and maybe an egg if you had one. The result? A tender, juicy meatball that held its shape without drying out. This trick also stretched your meat further, letting 1 pound do the work of 2. It came from Italian kitchens, but American homes embraced it fast. Sunday dinners, church potlucks, and penny-pinching mothers all used it. And it was not just for meatballs. You would see the same method in meatloaf and stuffed peppers too. The soaked bread kept things moist without adding weight. Modern recipes may call for panko or fancy crumbs, but this old trick still beats them all when it comes to comfort and thrift. Gravy over rice might sound like a side dish today, but in the 1930s, it was often the main event. When meat was scarce and vegetables were few, the leftover drippings from a roast, or even just some bacon grease and flour, got turned into gravy. Pour that over a pot of plain boiled rice, and suddenly you had dinner. It was salty, it was filling, and it used things that might otherwise go to waste. Gravy made even the blandest starch taste rich, and rice was a cheap staple that went a long way. Families would keep jars of fat and reuse every spoonful, sometimes adding a splash of milk or a bit of onion for extra depth. It was not about variety, it was about sustenance. One bowl of this could keep you full through a whole day's work, and that was all anyone hoped for. Some children grew up thinking this was a real meal, not realizing it was born of necessity. It was practical, thrifty, and as comforting as it was humbling. You did not need a feast. You just needed something hot, salty, and spoonable. Keeping lettuce crisp with damp towels was one of those quiet tricks that every grandfather seemed to know without ever needing a manual. Refrigerators with crisper drawers were not common in every household, so a simple towel soaked lightly in water became the next best thing. Lettuce heads would be wrapped gently and stored in a cool corner or ice box. The damp cloth slowed wilting, kept leaves from drying out, and added days of freshness to a vegetable that otherwise spoiled quickly. Families depended on greens for salads, sandwiches, and suppers, and wasting even one head of lettuce felt like throwing away money. The towel method stretched groceries further and kept meals looking more appetizing. A plate of limp, tired lettuce was never as welcome as one with crisp, bright leaves. This clever trick was taught in kitchens and passed quietly across generations, a testament to making do with little. Today, many people do not even think about it, but back then, a damp towel was the line between waste and dinner. Iceberg lettuce boats looked like diet food, but they were actually a clever way to stretch expensive proteins. Housewives would hollow out big crisp leaves and fill them with cottage cheese, tuna salad, or chopped ham, making one head of lettuce feed a whole family. They appeared on diet plates in diners, but at home they were a showcase of thrift dressed up as something stylish. A tray of these boats made it seem like you had spent hours planning, when in reality it was just a matter of scooping and spooning. They were crisp, fresh, and cheap, which checked every box for a busy mother trying to keep meals interesting. Cottage cheese and canned fruit made them light enough for summer lunches, while ham or tuna made them hearty for a quick dinner. Guests thought they were trendy, kids thought they were fun, and husbands thought they were health-conscious, which meant everyone went home happy. It was not about the lettuce at all. It was about the illusion that this was something fresh and new. That was the true genius of 70s cooking tricks, making ordinary food feel like a special creation. Cooking fish on wooden planks was an old outdoor trick that gave ordinary meals extraordinary flavor. Grandfathers would place fillets on soaked planks of cedar or oak, then set them near fire or coals. The wood steamed and smoked, infusing the fish with a rich aroma while keeping it moist. This method required no fancy pans or seasonings, just wood and patience. The result was a meal that tasted both rustic and refined, perfect for family gatherings or camp suppers. It was also practical, since the fish did not stick to pans and cleanup was easy. The technique carried a sense of tradition, passed down from native practices and embraced by homesteaders. Sharing fish cooked this way was a memorable experience, blending nature, flavor, and simplicity. Even when money was scarce, this trick made a humble catch taste like a feast. It was proof that clever cooking did not depend on gadgets, but on timeless knowledge. Ash baking was one of the most brilliant and humbling ways Native American cooks created bread without any tools, fancy ovens, or even a proper surface. When you needed to eat, you did not wait for the perfect setup. You dug into the earth itself. Dough was shaped into rough rounds and placed directly onto a bed of hot ashes and embers, then gently covered with more hot ash. The bread would cook slowly, surrounded by a blanket of heat, becoming crusty on the outside and pillowy soft on the inside. If a little ash clung to it, so be it. You brushed it off and bit into a smoky, earthy flavor that modern kitchens would pay fortunes to recreate. It was cooking stripped down to its raw, purest form, food born right from fire and earth. Today, ash-baked bread might seem primitive, but taste one bite of it, and you will understand exactly why this method lasted for centuries. And if you thought bread from ash was wild, wait until you hear how native chefs used cactus to transform even the toughest, most stubborn pieces of meat into buttery, tender feasts. Tomato juice as a soup-based starter was one of those ideas that seemed too simple to matter, until you tried it. When canned broth was hard to find or too expensive, people needed something flavorful, shelf-stable and easy to stretch. Tomato juice fit the bill perfectly. It added color, acidity, and a rich, savory base that made even the most basic vegetable soup taste like it had simmered for hours. It was especially popular in the 1940s and 1950s, when canned juices were lining grocery shelves and meat was either rationed or just plain pricey. Recipes would call for a cup of tomato juice, some diced potatoes or cabbage, and maybe a scoop of rice or beans. Suddenly, dinner was done. You could serve it with crackers or cornbread, or even pour it over noodles if you had them. It was quick, clean, and cost next to nothing. Some families even poured leftover tomato juice from canned tomatoes right into the pot. Waste not, want not. These soups were humble, but they were hearty, and sometimes that is all you needed, especially when times were tight. Cabbage water broth might not sound like much, but in the 1930s it was enough to keep people going. Boiling cabbage was already a regular routine, but families quickly learned to never pour the water down the drain. That cloudy, sulfur-scented liquid held nutrients, starch, and just enough flavor to turn into a soup base. Some would throw in a diced potato, a handful of onion skins, or a bit of old bread to thicken it. Others might add salt, if they had any, and call it a night. There was a kind of pride in making something from what others saw as nothing. It might not have tasted like much, but it was hot, filling, and warm on cold days when spirits were thin. In some houses, that broth became the start of a stew that would stretch out over days. You reused everything back then, especially the things no one thought to save. Even the cabbage leaves, once cooked soft and pale, might be mashed and eaten with a splash of vinegar. But the broth was the heart of it. It told a story of making do with what you had, even if it was only boiled water and scraps. It was soup born of hardship and resilience. Wax paper butter roll storage was a simple solution with a whole lot of heart behind it. You took softened butter, mixed in whatever you had, maybe garlic, maybe parsley, maybe just a pinch of salt, and rolled it into a log using wax paper. Then it went straight into the freezer. When dinner came around, you would slice off a coin or two and melt it over hot vegetables, baked potatoes, or a skillet of greens. It felt luxurious, even when the ingredients were humble. Some people called them compound butters, but back then, they were just a practical way to stretch flavor and save time. You always had something on hand to make dinner feel a little more finished. The wax paper kept it clean, neat, and easy to slice without wasting any. It also let families portion out butter when it was rationed or in short supply. Today, we lean on spice mixes or bottled dressings. But back then, a wax paper roll of homemade butter was a quiet form of planning ahead and a small bit of comfort that waited patiently in the freezer. Beet green stir-fry was a shining example of how the 1930s turned scraps into sustenance. When you bought or harvested beets, the leafy tops were never discarded. They were cooked. In fact, they were often more valuable than the beet itself. Families would wash them carefully, chop them up, and sauté them in bacon grease, lard, or whatever fat they had. Add a sprinkle of salt or a bit of vinegar, and you had a side dish that tasted far better than its humble roots. The greens were full of nutrients and gave meals color and texture. In cities and rural homes alike, people grew beets in small plots, and nothing was allowed to go to waste. These greens cooked quickly, wilted down, and took on the flavor of whatever you cooked them in. Served alongside potatoes, beans, or cornbread, they added just enough brightness to break up the monotony. It was not fancy, it was smart. Beet greens helped families stretch their gardens, their groceries, and their budgets. You might not miss them now, but back then, they made the difference between a plate that looked full and one that looked empty. Canned fruit syrup as sweetener was the secret sauce behind dozens of desserts and drinks when sugar was rationed or expensive. The syrup from canned peaches, pears, or pineapples was thick, sweet, and already full of fruit flavor, so thrifty cooks learned to never throw it away. They poured it into cake batters to replace sugar and milk, used it to thin frosting or sweeten gelatin molds, and even stirred it into coffee or tea. Some recipes called for reducing it slightly on the stovetop to make a more concentrated syrup. Others added cornstarch and used it as a glaze for pound cake or donuts. It was a way to get extra flavor and moisture without using up precious pantry staples. Magazines from the 1940s through the 1970s suggested it often, usually alongside tips for reusing the fruit itself in upside-down cakes or salad toppings. It was a full-circle solution. Nothing wasted, everything sweetened. If you grew up with canned fruit, you probably remember the taste of that syrup more than the peaches themselves. Making fruit leather with nothing but the sun and a flat rock was the perfect way to capture summer's sweetness for the long, hungry months ahead. Native American cooks would mash wild berries, apples, or plums into thick, pulpy pastes and spread them carefully over flat, sun-warmed stones. Covered lightly with woven grasses or bark to keep pests away, the fruit would dry slowly under the open sky, concentrating into chewy, intensely flavored strips packed with vitamins and natural sugars. These homemade fruit leathers were not just snacks. They were essential travel rations, dessert after lean meals, and precious gifts given between families and tribes. And while these sweet creations came from the land's generosity, another treasure was pulled from its hidden places too, one that changed cooking, trade, and survival forever: the gathering of salt from natural licks deep in the wild. Cucumber vinegar soaks were a quick way to brighten the table when fresh vegetables were hard to come by. Church ladies sliced cucumbers thin, tossed them into vinegar and sugar, and left them to chill. After just a short soak, the cucumbers took on a crisp, tangy flavor that worked perfectly alongside heavy casseroles or fried meats. The sharpness of the vinegar balanced out starchy or greasy dishes, making meals feel lighter and fresher. During summer potlucks, bowls of these cucumbers were always emptied fast because they were refreshing and simple. It was an inexpensive side that felt new every time, no matter how often it appeared. The trick was that the vinegar kept the cucumbers firm and flavorful, so they could be made ahead without going limp. Families often passed around jars of these during hot months, and many recipes appeared in community cookbooks. Kids grew up expecting that every picnic table would have a plate of them. They were not just salad, but a cooling relief in the middle of sweltering afternoons. It was proof that even the simplest tricks could feel like a luxury when done with care. Stuffed bell peppers with rice were the ultimate thrifty oven dish. Housewives stretched a small amount of ground meat by mixing it with rice, tomato sauce, and seasonings, stuffing it all into colorful peppers. What might have been only enough for two became a meal for an entire family. Baking them together let the flavors mingle, turning cheap ingredients into a dish that felt warm and complete. It was filling, economical, and surprisingly impressive when placed on the table. Housewives knew that recipes like this were about more than saving money. They were about creating meals that carried pride. It became a regular weeknight dinner that required very little but delivered a lot. Families walked away satisfied, and the kitchen stayed under budget. It was a shining example of how thrift and flavor met in perfect harmony in 70s kitchens. Cast iron lid baking was born out of necessity and kept alive by sheer determination. When families had no access to an oven, or when it was too hot to fire one up, they made do with what they had. And what they had was a heavy cast iron pot, usually with a domed lid. Flip that lid over, set it on a flame, and you had a perfectly usable griddle surface for baking bannock, soda bread, or flat cakes. Some folks even propped up the lid with bricks and piled coals on top to create an improvised oven. It took practice to keep the heat even, but the reward was hot bread on a day you thought there would be none. This method showed up in everything from log cabins to war kitchens, and it never let people down. Cast iron held heat like nothing else, and when times got tough, it doubled as bakeware, skillet, and roasting pan. The lid was more than a cover. It was a secret weapon. These tricks rarely appear in modern books, but they kept people fed for generations. Mashed potato donuts were a wartime favorite that combined comfort, frugality, and just enough indulgence. They started as a way to use up leftover mashed potatoes, especially the cold, sticky kind no one wanted to reheat. Mixed with flour, sugar, eggs, and spices, the dough was rolled out, cut into rings, and fried until golden. The potatoes made them tender on the inside, with a crisp outer shell that held up well to a dusting of powdered sugar or a quick dip in glaze. The texture was somewhere between a cake donut and a fritter, and they were surprisingly filling. These showed up in cookbooks throughout the 1940s and 1950s, usually listed under budget baking or no-waste desserts. They were popular at church events, bake sales, and family breakfasts, where everyone needed something sweet and satisfying. People even used boxed instant mashed potatoes when real ones were in short supply. It was not just about saving money, it was about turning scraps into something worth looking forward to. And in kitchens where not a spoonful could be wasted, these donuts made every bite count. Which 1930s survival hack would you bring back today? Drop your answer in the comments, hit that like button if this brought back memories, and subscribe so you never miss another trip down memory lane.